Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Hello and welcome to the Skeptic Zone, episode number 262 on the 27th of October 2013. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia. And thank goodness and thank the firefighters that the fires are, if not out, at least they're under control. Yes, those terrible wildfires to the west of Sydney and other places around the state of New South Wales are under control. We'll be discussing those a little bit later in today's episode in the Think Tank. Yes, it's the return of the Think Tank. Joining me in the Think Tank are Dr. Rachael, Joanne Benhamu and Benhamu, Eran Segev, and our guest, Margaret-Ann Tait. We'll be discussing climate change sort of topics. Also, the recent appearance of Meryl Dorey from the Australian Vaccination Network. Yes, those zany, wacky people are at it again. She was recently on national TV, and Dr. Rachael has something to say about that, I can promise you. And Joanne Benhamu will be talking about chiropractic. The return of the Think Tank, that's coming up later in the show. But to kick off the show, we have an interview with a Norwegian author, Gunnar Tjomlid, who, I hope I said that right, who will be telling us all about his new book, The Placebo Defect, all about placebo and how it works or it appears to work and all sorts of things relating to that. It's good if you're Norwegian, you can read his book. I hope it'll be coming out in English. Anyway, it's a fascinating interview all about this very interesting part of medicine and psychology. Only a few weeks to go now until the Australian Skeptics National Convention, and I must say congratulations to Lauren and Amanda in Canberra who have recently joined the committee, the Canberra Skeptics Committee. Congratulations, ladies. I'm sure you'll make a wonderful contribution. Can't wait to see you too when we come down to Canberra for the convention. To get those last tickets, and what fun we're going to have, visit nationalskepticsconvention.org. Snap up those last tickets and join us for a weekend of skepticism and magic and fun and spoon bending and all sorts of things. That's the 22nd to the 24th of November. Can't wait to see Dr. Paul Willis there, of course. And speaking of Paul Willis, of course, in this week's episode we have the ever-popular Week in Science from the Royal Institution of Australia. What would we do without a Week in Science? Now, if you visit www.skepticzone.tv, you might have noticed we've got a little thermometer going for Maynard to help cover his hotel room, because Maynard is coming to Melbourne with us to cover the convention. Lots of interviews, lots of insights, and Maynard's usual craziness. But we do need a little bit of help to cover his hotel room so he can bring you many, many weeks of interesting interviews and insights from his point of view. Now, you can just chip in, which is really wonderful, and some people have been doing that. Very grateful. I'm very grateful, of course. Or you may wish to bid on the Skeptic Zone poster, which is up for auction at the moment. If you visit www.skepticzone.tv, have a look right at the top of the page, well, almost, is a link to the eBay bid and a photograph of myself, Eran Segev, Joanne Benhamu, Stefan Soika, Dr. Rachael, and Maynard during a recording of the Think Tank. All our autographs are there. It's a really nice photograph. Sort of looks like it was taken in the TARDIS. It's a bit strange, but there you go. Have a look. You can bid on that if you want, but if you do want to help out, would be very grateful. Or, as some people do, you may wish to subscribe to the Skeptic Zone for less than $1 a week. Well, that's enough of me at the moment. Maybe a few more things to say at the end of the show. But now it's time for me to run downstairs. Open the fridge. I wonder if there's any of yesterday's curried chickpeas left. Curried chickpeas. That's the key word this week, folks. All those people who write to me saying that they try to match in their fridge what I have in mind. Good luck. Curried chickpeas. Why do that? I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. joining me now all the way from beautiful Norway. Norway. I was only there in April and I fell in love with the place. Must go back again. Is the author of a new book called, in English, The Placebo Defect. Please welcome to the Skeptic Zone, Gunnar Tjomlid. Hello.
Hello.
I'm sorry if I've got your name completely wrong there. My Norwegian is not the best.
It sounded quite okay.
I'm pleased to hear it. Now, you've written an interesting book and you've done some research, obviously, into the placebo effect, and this is really one of the most interesting things that a skeptic can come across or study, because it sort of enters many areas, not only alternative medicine, but certainly it's a way of thinking and it's a way of feeling that something has happened. What inspired you to write about the placebo effect?
Well, the book isn't only about the placebo effect. What I'm trying to explain in the book is why people experience that treatments that don't work, why they experience that they do work, and so try to go into the psychology of that. And the placebo effect is, of course, one of many effects that make you feel something works. But it could also be memory, the illusion of remembering things as closer together in time than they actually were, and many things. And I find it very interesting to try to really understand why someone can use a treatment like homeopathy and feel that it really worked for them. Just try to explain why that might be an illusion and why that might not be any proof that it actually works, even though it feels as if it works.
It certainly does, and this is something, of course, that we come across in many aspects of skeptical thinking. And it's often the case when somebody thinks something has really worked for them, that it's almost impossible. It's almost impossible to convince them otherwise, to make them see that maybe it hasn't worked at all. And I guess homeopathy is one of the best examples that you can find. What other treatments do you look at?
Well, I didn't want to write a new trick or treatment book, so I don't really go into very many different alternative treatments. But I have gone quite extensively into 3 different treatments, and that's homeopathy, because that's at one end of the spectrum, which is kind of more like religion or just pure magic. And then you have acupuncture, which I have placed kind of in the middle, because it's, even though it probably doesn't work, it's been, it's a bit inside the Norwegian healthcare. Some doctors use it, and they use it when for pregnant women who are giving childbirth and things. And then you also have chiropractic, which in Norway isn't regarded as alternative at all. It's just like most people think it's like physical therapy. It's just ordinary medicine. So I went into depth of those 3 treatments, and I think people who read the book will maybe have some what do you call it in English? In Norwegian we call it a aha experience, where you get some where you probably will learn some things that you didn't really know about acupuncture and maybe also chiropractic.
That's a good expression, aha. I think maybe the closest one I can think of is, we say, the penny drops. I don't know if you're familiar with that. A realization. Well, I think you've picked 3 of the biggest ones in Western society. Homeopathy, of course, is very big. Acupuncture in Australia, too, is very big. But I find chiropractic is very interesting because, like in Norway, in Australia, most people regard chiropractic as mainstream. And they don't really know, or they haven't learnt yet. It's shaky. It's very shaky foundations. So were you involved with talking to people who had gone through these treatments?
Yeah, I did a little bit of research just to try to find out how people who had been to a chiropractor actually experienced it. But the most important things that people will find when reading the chapter about chiropractic is, firstly, there isn't any good evidence that it actually works for the 2 main treatments, lower back pain and neck pain, which will surprise many, I think, because
I think so, yeah.
they just expect it to work because I heard so many people that have experienced that it works, and also that you have quite a lot of serious side effects, and people actually can die from having a chiropractic adjustment, especially of the neck. So, and I also, what was quite interesting is when I started writing about chiropractic, I started writing that, the origins, it was, they talked about these subluxations and stuff, and it's quite magical. It's the life energy or life force going through your spine and things. And I was going to write that, but in Norway, Norwegian chiropractors don't believe this anymore, and they only treat, like muscular skeleton pains. But when I started doing some Google searches and reading the websites of Norwegian chiropractors, I actually found a few that still talk about subluxations, and people who actively reject vaccines. They tell people don't get vaccinated because it's dangerous chemicals and stuff. And they kind of they tell people not to use ordinary medicine because it's dangerous. So that shocked me a bit that it was so. Of course, it doesn't. Most chiropractors, I think, in Norway are they like scientific evidence, even though there isn't so much to support chiropractics. They at least try to give the impression that that's important. But then you have also a subgroup that are completely alternative, that reject scientific-based medicine.
Isn't that interesting? Because I think that's more or less the situation here as well. There are certainly many chiropractors operating in Australia who do go into the whole subluxation way of thinking. And a lot of chiropractors, sadly, aren't supporting of vaccination. And it must be difficult for the chiropractors out there who think that, all that is not safe and not good and rubbish, and concentrate mainly on just trying to give good massages and fix people's pain in their lower back. It's a very interesting area. And in this country, especially lately, there's been a lot of controversy because there's been reports of a baby who had their neck damaged with a chiropractor. And our good friend Dr. Rachael Dunlop has exposed some chiropractors who are, promoting anti-vaccination. And again, just getting back to this whole placebo area, when somebody goes into a chiropractor or an acupuncturist and they have a procedure done, and there's somebody in a white coat and they spend time with them, I'm not surprised when they leave the office that they report feeling better.
Yeah, absolutely. And what I try to focus on in my book is that the placebo effect isn't just something we use to explain away the effect of alternative treatments. The placebo effect is present at all kinds of treatments, even surgery. So I give some examples from surgeries that have been done earlier, or surgical procedures that used to be done. And when they tested them in a controlled way, they found that the effect actually was just a placebo effect. And then they have stopped using those surgical treatments. So I try to explain how this is a component of all kinds of treatments. But the difference between what we call school medicine in Norway, which is quite a bad word, but conventional medicine, or what you want to call it, and alternative medicine, is that we actually try to eliminate those unspecific treatment effects, like the placebo effects, to find the real therapeutic effects. And that's the big difference in thinking, that we acknowledge that there is a placebo effect, and that's all well and good if you can use it as a bonus effect, but you can't base your treatment only on that. And then many people ask, okay, why not? Why, if people feel better, why isn't the placebo effect good enough? And I used the last part of my book to go into the harms of alternative treatments, and I try to see that this is, when you balance it out, the positive effects and the negative effects, you can't really support alternative treatments, even though there is a placebo effect.
That's interesting, and there's also an argument or some discussion of whether it's ethical to use something that doesn't work but will deliver a placebo effect, or as a doctor, you should be upfront with your patient and say, I'm going to try this, but it has no physiological benefit, but you might feel in your mind you feel some relief.
Yeah, it's quite difficult because I also go into the last part of my book. I see how ordinary doctors use the placebo effect or use placebo treatments. And there have been quite a lot of studies looking into that. And it's quite interesting because, of course, some kind of triggering the placebo effects is good, like talking up the medicine if you can support it scientifically. But telling the patient that this pill will have a good effect is a good thing to do because it will probably boost the effect a little. But talking down the medicine and just focusing on the side effects, for example, although, of course, the patient should be informed, we shouldn't overdo that because then you actually can trigger some side effects that wouldn't have been triggered otherwise. So it's quite difficult to choose the right wording. You have to talk up the medicine and you have to be honest and towards the patient, but you shouldn't focus probably too much on the negative aspects, because I also have a chapter in the book about the nocebo effect and talking about how this expectation of harm or expectation of side effects can actually trigger some of these negative effects.
Isn't that interesting? And how long did it take you to put this book together?
Well, that's quite hard to answer because I signed a contract with the publishing company 3 years ago, but I didn't use all that time writing. But you could also argue that probably I've been discussing this topic for almost 10 years probably on the internet, and I've been collecting knowledge about it for many, many years. So, but I've been effectively writing the book probably the last 2 years, just going through all the articles and hundreds of studies that I've collected and written about earlier, because I also have a skeptical blog, and I've written quite a lot about these topics in my blog.
That's interesting, and for the benefit of our listeners, where can they find your skeptical blog? Well, if you Google my name, you'll find it. The domain name is actually my last name, Tjomlid.com. In Norway, most skeptical people will know where to find it. If you Google Gunnar Tjomlid, you'll find it. Okay, well, I'll put a link in the show notes so people can visit our website there and easily find that. And who's publishing the book?
It's something called the Humanist Forlag in Norway, which is a publishing division or company owned, I think it's owned, at least collaborating with the Humanist Association in Norway.
And is your book now available online? Can people buy it online, or is it in the bookstores?
Yeah, you can find it online. You can buy it directly from humanistforlag.no, the publishing company, where you can get both the physical paper copy and you can also get electronic books in Mobi and EPUB files. But you can also find it on iTunes if you look up my name, or search for the Placebo Defekten. And you can also find it in bookstores and on online bookstores.
And at the moment, is the book only in Norwegian?
Yeah, it's only in Norwegian.
Okay. Any plans to have it translated into English?
Well, if we get a huge, start an email campaign to the publishing company, maybe they'll want to translate it. But there are no concrete plans for that at the moment, no.
Another thing it's popular for authors to do now, and I don't know if this has crossed your mind, is a lot of authors will read their books and sell the audio file online. It's something you might even consider.
Yeah, there's actually been quite a lot of requests that people want an audio version of the book. Maybe we should do something like that. I don't know yet, but that might be an option.
Well, speaking personally, I've read many books, but I must be candid with you and say that when I say I've read many books, I've actually listened to many books because I absorb information far better through my ears than my eyes, I think. And it's always enjoyable to hear an author read their book because they've got that extra passion and knowledge, I guess you could say. Well, it's been wonderful to chat with you. I wish you every success with your book, The Placebo Defect. Sounds interesting. I might even hold my breath and wait till it comes out in English so I can enjoy it too. But for our Norwegian listeners, and we have many listeners in Norway, I hope they run to the website and discover your fascinating book. But for now, thank you for joining us on the Skeptic Zone.
Thank you for having me.
This is Jay Novella from the Skeptic's Guide to the Universe podcast. Did you know that there are thousands of skeptical reports, interviews, and investigations going back to 1981, free to download? Just visit www.skeptics.com.au. Click the publications link and enjoy almost every back issue of The Skeptic, the journal from Australian skeptics. You can also subscribe online and get the latest digital or hard copy of this, the world's second oldest skeptical magazine. That's www.skeptics.com.au or just Google Australian Skeptics.
Welcome to A Week in Science from RiAus, bringing you the science news you need to know. This week in science, we saw challenging human evolution, one flu jab to rule them all, and good news for baldies. Has the analysis of a 1.8 million year old skull turned our understanding of human evolution on its head? The skull of a human ancestor was found with 4 others in Georgia and combines physical features that are generally used to distinguish between different species. Researchers suggest that fossils previously classified as separate species may in fact all be the same, but displaying different physical appearances just like modern humans. This has been viewed with scepticism by many other archaeologists who say that it is a dramatic overinterpretation. We may be one step closer to one jab that protects us against all strains of the flu. When you get a flu vaccine, your body produces antibodies that are specific to that particular virus strain, meaning you need a new jab every year as the virus mutates. To tackle this, researchers injected mice with a drug that stops your body from producing virus-specific antibodies. When used together with the vaccine, the mice produced more general antibodies that protected them against several flu viruses at once. You're listening to A Week in Science from RiAus, and now, 4 science headlines in 30 seconds. Researchers have developed small medical implants containing cells which are activated by light to increase insulin production. A child's level of math skills are evident at 6 months of age. Gum trees absorb gold particles through their roots, which are then deposited in their leaves, meaning gold literally does grow on trees. And good news for baldies. Researchers have grown human hair follicles for the first time. The bad news is the skin used came from circumcised foreskins. Did you know that A Week in Science is now available on iTunes, YouTube, Vimeo, and various sites around the world, including Science Alert, Cosmos Magazine, and Sustainability TV. You can also hear A Week in Science on the Skeptic Zone podcast, as well as around Australia on the Community Radio Network. Tell your friends there's no reason not to get their science news fix each week. That was A Week in Science, and I'll see you next week.
This is Ben Radford. I'm Deputy Editor of Skeptical Inquirer Science Magazine, author of 6 books, including Tracking Chupacabra, and you can find out more about me at benjaminradford.com.
Join us now for Drinking Skeptically in the Think Tank.
But today we have little Nomington joining us. So little Nomington's cousin.
I think I'm Big Nomington after the meal I've had.
You're Big Nomington. Well, I'd like to welcome you, Big Nomington, and all the other Nomingtons in the room to the think tank in the storage room. Cheers, everybody.
An echoey cheers, Richard.
Yes, we have discovered a little storage room in our favourite club down the end of the street because the room we wanted to use has lovely elevator music, Dr. H.
Quite loud elevator music, Richard.
It's good to see you here.
It was, we were worried that Marcos was going to break into capoeira or something during the podcast, so we had to move into the storeroom.
We have some special guests tonight. We have Marcos. Hello, Marcos.
Oh, hi. Hi. How are you?
He says with a beer in his hand.
He's just moving his arms in a way that says, I have no idea what I'm supposed to do now.
Yes.
We'll just make it up as you go along.
Okay.
And that other voice you know so well, Eran Segev. Hello, Eran.
Hello, Richard.
With your paper. You got a new watch.
Yes, it's a Pebble.
A Pebble?
This watch has apps. It talks to my phone. My phone talks to it. Actually, I talk to both of them. You know, I kind of... They're a bit... my friends...
You know, if they start talking to you...
So if you're going to say that I'm a geek...
No. I was going to say there's medication for that if they start talking to you.
And somebody who knows about medication, Joanne Benhamu.
Hi, Richard.
You're medicating yourself at the moment, eh?
Oh, if you consider Diet Coke medication.
And also joining us tonight is somebody who comes along to Skeptics in the pub here in Sydney. It's Margaret-Ann Tait. Hello, Margaret.
Hi.
Great to have you along here. I hope you're not too shocked by the fact we are actually in a storage room.
Yeah, this is, yes, confronting. Didn't expect this.
I'm kind of pretending we're in a bomb shelter or something.
It's like that.
But you must remember that Margaret actually inadvertently proposed that the next one will be at her place, so...
Well, it would be a little bit more comfortable, I think, than these little chairs. Yeah.
Oh, it's not too bad. It's not too bad. The restaurant was particularly noisy tonight.
That was Richard's cognitive dissonance kicking in.
You're using those big words with me, Joanne Benhamu. And it's really nice to have another think tank, don't you think, Dr. A.G.?
It's been ages, hasn't it?
It's been a long time.
Dr. Richard.
Yeah, it's been a long time.
I guess we've all been pretty busy. I don't know about you guys, but I've been frantic.
You've been really busy.
I've had my head up my bum or something. I don't know. It's just been mental.
And you were part of the evacuation at UTS the other day.
Oh, not really. But I did meet a friend of mine on the street, actually, who for a long time has been working in Building 10, which is about 2 buildings over from me. And we've never bothered to catch up for coffee or anything. I've been there for over a year, and we were in the street getting evacuated, and we met up. So, hi, John, if you're listening.
There you go. How about that? Well, over the last couple of weeks, there have been some very prominent issues come to our attention in the skeptical sort of realm of things, especially to do with so-called alternative medicine. So why don't we kick off with you, Dr. H. A couple of days ago, last weekend... there was one of these false balance so-called debates on television, which we're somewhat unhappy about. Yeah,
look, I was livid, and there aren't even enough swear words in the dictionary or the thesaurus to cover how livid I was. I had people actually a little bit worried about me, and I had a friend just calling my mobile constantly, and I refused to answer the phone.
This is, of course, the appearance of Meryl Dory.
I haven't actually seen her quite so shouty for a long time.
Well, you know, it was that bad that Jo used a swear word.
It's true.
No.
Twice.
She used to swear twice.
Good heavens.
So, in summary, what happened was...
Yes, for people who may not know.
Yeah, there was a morning breakfast television program on a Saturday morning that decided they would have a great vaccination debate, which is something we've been working on quashing from the media for a number of years and working very hard to do that, actually. And so that was featured Meryl Dory and, unfortunately, a professor of paediatrics and infectious disease. So it was... the timing of it was also pretty poor, and... I sort of took it a bit personally, even though I'm sure it wasn't, and it absolutely wasn't. But because the Wednesday before it happened, an article of mine had been published in The Guardian with the headline, "Anti-vaxxers should not have a say in the mainstream media."
Yes.
And then to have on Saturday this debate, which was the same old tired old stuff that the mainstream media pulls out. You know, they have the professor of paediatrics and who says something, and then they have Meryl also touted as an expert. So, you know, the super said experts debate.
And debate, and the ongoing
as if
debate.
there was, you know, equal validity to their expertise. But unfortunately, the implications of that were not just this like 2 or 3 minutes on television, in the back channels in places like social media and other places, it's revitalised the AVN in a way, and they'd been extremely quiet for quite some time. We're currently waiting on the outcome of several investigations from several government acronyms, one of which is the directive to change their name, which is coming up in the next 6 weeks, I think.
About time. That's been going on for ages.
The deadline's 6 months for a decision, and the 6 months will be up in a little while. So they'd gone to ground, essentially. And this has not only revitalised her ego-wise, and also she now thinks she's back in the game. And she mentioned something about my television career on Facebook. But it's revitalised her followers. But I think the reason I and others were so angry about it is not just because of the false balance thing, but because behind the scenes we saw a lot of parents who have been at the receiving end of the nasty, vicious horribleness that comes from the AVN and their supporters. Yeah. And they were saying things like, well, now she's back on television, it's like a twist of the knife into my heart again, and reminds me of what I had to go through when she was sending, and her followers were sending letters and writing blogs about us. And so it's those people that actually suffer from this kind of stuff. And this is what made me so angry, was that somebody agreed to do this from the pro-vax side when it wasn't necessary. And apparently they didn't understand the implications of doing it. And what they don't realise is that this creates a ripple effect when this sort of thing happens, which then we have to work with and work on for months and months and months to try and whack-a-mole.
There's sort of this understanding that if you have an expert to counter a crank, then the public are then going to be able to see that what's being said by someone like Meryl Dorey is nonsense. Whereas, in fact, it doesn't work that way. And it's why, for example, one of the examples I've heard in the last few days is Richard Dawkins, who refuses to debate creationists.
That's right, for many years.
And, in fact, the quote was, what he'd say to them is that would look great on your CV, but not so good on mine.
Absolutely right, yeah.
So I think it's kind of, it's very... And I can kind of understand, though, how, one would think, well, no, look, we have to be there. We have to counter what these people are saying. But it does. It sets up that false...
But it also makes it more difficult for us, because in Australia, if television stations or media do things like that, if they perpetuate or provide a platform for false information, we can go to complaints people and we can make complaints, and they can actually get sanctioned for that. So, but if there is an expert also there, then the complaints department see that as, well, no, I'm sorry, because
we provided balance.
We provided an expert there to refute those claims, so you have no grounds to complain. So in fact, it's worse having somebody else on there who is actually a scientist or a doctor than just having her on. And not only from the perspective of complaining and successfully getting these people sanctioned. We know from evidence now, there is the paper that, and this is the thing that made me just so stabby on Saturday, was because this freaking paper that was published in April this year, which I wrote up in The Guardian on Wednesday and was available to everybody to read.
You're getting shouty.
But this, it's not like this information is locked behind paywalls or, people can't see it, and it was there and it's out there, and... So it's not just... We know from that sort of research that these kind of debates are actually worse than having an anti-vaxxer there, because, as Joe alluded to, it instills in people's minds that there is true conflict amongst experts, that there is true debate amongst...
Especially when one of those complete cranks is labelled as an expert.
Yeah, and if you look at the scientific evidence, there's no debate amongst scientists about the safety.
It was easy television. Right?
And the anti-vaxxers have the benefit of not needing to actually have data or information. They
or
just because of whatever they want. Yeah. So there's that saying about never argue with an idiot, because they'll drag you down to their level and beat you with experience. But that's exactly what they do. I mean, they have they have an arsenal that our side can't use.
That's right.
Of just being able to pull.
Yeah, but also there's another saying about arguing. It came from arguing with creationists, and the saying is it's like playing chess with a pigeon. They shit all over the board, knock the pieces off, and fly home to say they won. Which I particularly like, because it's a very good visual, isn't it? And, you know, I think that applies extremely well to the anti-vaxxers, wouldn't you say, Jo?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
But it sounds like Meryl Dorey actually sort of appealed to you know, the audience in some way. She has some sort of charisma or whatever in the media. So, and that's sort of, that must be hard to, you know, for somebody to...
She's got a good pattern.
Go against,
Yeah, she's got a good...
Sort of kindly aunt.
Yeah.
And we're only here to help, and we want to explore both sides. And yeah, I'm doing.
And also, the point is, she's a mum, and she's got a vaccine-injured child, allegedly. So, of course, she's got the emotive side to appeal to. And we also know from research that white coats and graphs and science and facts do not appeal to people's emotional side. So we know from a lot of social research that just using the facts on people or trying to debate based with science doesn't work.
Yeah.
It just,
you need to tell a story.
Yeah.
You need to tell a story. It needs to be a compelling human story.
Yeah.
And that's what Meryl has. She has that, my child was sick in 1994, blah, 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 blah.
And she's a mum. People can relate to her. She's just like another person on the street. It's not,
Yeah.
She's exactly like another person. She's exactly what she is.
I think she
just another person on the street.
I think she couldn't be less qualified than the average person in the street. I mean, she finished high school and that's it.
She has a brain.
Yeah, she's a brain.
You and I were both there that day, weren't we?
Yeah.
At Channel 7 when they 4 years?
Yeah.
More than 4 years ago.
More than 4 years ago.
That's where we met Bastard Sheep for the first time.
Yeah, it was.
Actually. That's long. Yeah, there we were. You, me, Ratbag, and some other people, I think. Yeah.
And I guess that's the other point too, is that you mentioned that we've been doing this for a long time, and it only takes one of these things to really put us back quite a long way. So we really need to be diligent about this, and we hope that people don't do this stuff again, because, I mean, as I said to somebody on the weekend, you know, for me, I get abused for doing this stuff, but I can walk away from this. I can stop lobbying the media. I can stop writing articles. I can stop writing blogs. And then the trolls will fall away eventually and it will just go back to normal. But there are some people that can't do that. And those are the people whose kids were injured or died from vaccine-preventable diseases. Yeah. They cannot walk away from this. Yeah. And so that's why we're here to fight for them. And so when we have someone on our side give us a slap across the side of the head, it's very disheartening.
It is.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned the word back there, Dr. Reggie. Back. Because that brings us to our
very strange segue.
It's our next segue into our next topic, which is the recent story and controversy about chiropractic, Jo Benhamu.
Yes, you might have heard in the papers over the last few weeks, a paediatrician by the name of Dr. Chris Pappas reported to APRA, which is the Australian Health Practitioner Regulation Authority. It would have been in 2012, I think he put the report in. He had treated a 4-month-old baby who presented in the emergency department of a hospital in Melbourne with a fractured neck. And the baby had received chiropractic treatment 2 days before this presentation. Dr. Pappas lodged this complaint, and the chiropractic board conducted an investigation into this, and it recently came out in the media that this had happened. Now, what's been terribly distressing about this event is that it began just as this report about this adverse event, this baby suffering this injury. It's become a way for the Chiropractors Association of Australia to basically go into damage control, because they see it as an attack on chiropractic to merely even question that there could possibly be an adverse event associated with chiropractic care.
5 years, Jo.
Yes, 5 years.
5 years at university they spend, Richard.
So,
criticise them.
So do the janitors, don't they?
So what happened was the report came out in the media a couple of weeks ago. Amy Corduroy and Julie Medju from the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age wrote this up. This was actually at about the same time. They also included in their report some other rather stunning revelations about a number of chiropractors who have been sneaking into hospitals to treat newborn babies.
Yes, I heard about that.
Well, we can go back to that one in a minute. But when it came out, the CAA, which is just in case you're not aware, there are two chiropractic organisations. There's COCA, which is the Chiropractic and Osteopathic College, and there's the CAA. Now, the CAA are the sort of anti-vax, more kind of fundamentalist chiropractic
civilizations and all
germ
that.
theory denying.
Yeah. And they immediately put out a press release, and the press release claimed that there never was a fracture, and that the information that had been put out was wrong, and that the chiropractor involved had been found not to have engaged in any improper conduct.
Yeah.
And this was all very strange because this paediatrician had, clearly treated this baby for this. It all seemed to kind of be quite as it was described. Anyway, it literally became a back and forth between the different groups of health professionals, with the CAA claiming that nothing had been found, with the doctors involved absolutely sort of sticking by their story and saying, yes, something had been found. And then, now if I remember correctly, the next thing in the chain of events was that somehow the actual report was tabled in Parliament, to the Queensland Parliament. And it was only the X-ray report which was tabled, and this claimed... it was one of the CT scans, and this claimed to show that, in fact, there was no fracture in this child's spine. And someone actually went and had a look at the Queensland government, the Parliament website, and found the entire report had been tabled, not just a single CT.
Whoops.
So this was now in the public domain, able to be scrutinised. Yeah. And Dr. John Cunningham, who's an orthopaedic surgeon, had a look at this report, and a number of other people, of kind of all people who are really experts in orthopaedics and paediatrics and so on, had a look at this. And actually, what happened was, and look, I know orthopaedics is not my area, and I'm not a medical doctor, so I'm just sort of reporting it as I understand it. But what happened was, it turned out that this baby had a congenital condition called spondylolysis. What it seems happened is that the fracture occurred at a weakened point in the vertebra. Right. Now, on the initial CT scan, I think there was evidence of a fracture, but subsequent CT scans didn't actually demonstrate this. Right. Until a final CT scan, which was done about 3 or 4 months later, which showed evidence of a healing fracture. Oh, right. Now, the CAA didn't mention this. They only mentioned the previous two. The child had about 4 CT scans, and the CAA only mentioned the 2 which didn't show any of this.
No, really?
That's correct.
Did they mention that the child went through 4 CTs in a very short time because of this?
No.
And also, can I just add that this fracture is known amongst the medical profession as a hangman's fracture,
I've heard that, yeah.
which is supposed to give you the same effect as if you hung someone. So essentially, the allegations are that this child had a neck that was broken in a way that you would get if you hang someone.
Now, you can actually read the report. It is actually in the public domain now, of course. So what this really comes down to is, look, we can speculate until we're blue in the face about what did or didn't happen and whether the chiropractor was responsible. Ultimately, the things that we keep hearing from the CAA are the following lines. There has not been a chiropractic adverse event in a child since 1992. Why?
Bing.
Yeah. 5 years, Rachel. 5 years of university. I mean, we all know that there are risks in everything we do.
Of course.
Okay, now, the aviation industry knows this, construction industry, medicine, and we do everything we can to mitigate that risk.
For God's sake.
Yeah, everything.
Risking that.
But, according to the CAA, there is so little risk of anything involved in chiropractic that there's no need for what they have in every other industry, which is an adverse events reporting system. So the reason you can't find reports of any adverse events is because they don't collect any data.
I'd say it goes a little bit further than that, because it's not that they don't collect any data, they deny the data when it comes along.
Well, that too. That too. So one of the things that was really quite horrifying also about how this was handled was that the report from the report that was submitted to the chiropractic board was done by a chiropractor, and in it, the person who did this report speculates that there might have been child abuse involved. Now,
shifting the blame.
Totally shifting the blame. It is something that is quite an abhorrent suggestion to make when, there's no evidence to suggest that. There is almost a complete refusal to just simply address the fact that there are basic risks in anything we do.
Yeah.
They are wanting to... They want to be primary healthcare providers.
They do, don't they? Yes.
It's something that they explicitly stated. I think it was in the CAA's one of their public.
Catalyst.
They want to act as primary healthcare providers. Now, if you're going to behave as a primary healthcare provider, you need to provide the public with the reassurance of knowing that you are doing everything you can to improve quality and safety. Now, in no way am I saying that the healthcare industry, medicine, nursing, any of us are perfect. There are a lot of problems in our industries. We have, adverse events. We have, there are the same, we're human beings. We make mistakes, but we do our best to improve on that. And in fact, there have been some fantastic reports over the last few years. There was a wonderful one which came out in 2001, I think, from the National Institute of Health in America called To Err is Human. And it was a report which really recognised the alarming number of adverse events in healthcare. And it set out to really address that and to bring down those numbers.
Can I add something to this, Jo? Because I think this is an important point as well, is that there's a risk ratio that you have to deal with as well. So when we all go for surgery, for example, we're told there's a risk of things involved with the anaesthetic, the surgery and everything. Yeah. You make a decision based on that. Is it better for me to get this removed or should I just risk it? The point that we have with paediatric chiropractic is the risks are too high when the benefit is nil.
Yeah. Have you seen all
they
those
don't do anything
in the media and online on Facebook of babies being manipulated by chiropractors?
Well, but this is the problem, is on the one hand, you have them saying that what they do is so inconsequential in terms of the risk of harm that it's literally like, I've heard them describe it as like touching the skin on a ripe tomato.
What?
Now, the thing is, if what you're doing is so... And in fact, Mick Vag wrote the most fabulous piece in The Conversation the other day, and the way he described it was, he said, if adjusting or fixing a subluxation in a child is no different to, touching the skin on a ripe tomato, then are all not chiropractors, accidentally fixing subluxations merely by handling our children and passing them around?
Yes. Yeah.
So either you're doing something or you're not doing something.
Yeah.
And if you're doing something, then there's a risk.
That's the funny thing. Supposedly, though, you're actually touching in a certain way, but when you think about a tomato, though, there's touching the tomatoes, you or anyone here would do, and actually going squish. You get ketchup, and
I think that's what happened, and that sums up quite well.
Now, I think it surprises me. I guess in a way, it surprised me, I should say, many years ago when I first started learning about chiropractic and the utter gobsmackingly ridiculous fundamentals behind it, because I had always thought growing up that it was simply another branch of medicine. Indeed, especially you too, eh?
I didn't think it was mental as it is.
I just thought it was. You have optometrists, you have pediatrics.
I've undergone it as well. There's no reason to think. If you are anyone, layperson, there's no reason to think what they aren't.
Yeah. That this is not about a health profession. It's about an ideological belief.
It's a civilization before care. It's a civilization before benevolence.
But on top of that, I think that it's kind of like with the anti-vaxxers. They forget all the stories they've told, so they can't remember what they've said. Because you pointed this out to me, Jo, that the CAA are claiming this never happened and it was never real, and they demanded a retraction and an apology. However, there are records on APRA that show that this chiropractor was sent to... extra classes.
Oh, that's right. The actual when the report came out in the media, It said that the chiropractor in question had been ordered as part of the findings of this investigation to undergo training with a paediatric chiropractor.
With a paediatric chiropractor?
Now that in itself is outrageous because paediatric chiropractic is a nonsense.
They made it up.
It's an absolute nonsense.
Yeah. Have you been to a chiropractor, Margaret?
I have. My mother has been going to one for 30 years or so. I mean, so I grew up with the chiropractors were always, that was the thing, she was going there every week or so.
Yeah.
She sent me there when I was, young, when I was 12, 13.
I went to one when I was about that age too.
Yeah, and not because... Yeah, it worked, see? See? Not because there was anything wrong with me, but it was all preventative. The chiropractor was probably in her ear. Oh, yeah, it's time for Margaret-Ann to go and get
an alignment.
To get, have an adjustment or whatever.
Did you, when I used to go, I used to lie on the bed and then they'd get my jaw and my head and go, look, and something violently to one side and you hear the pops, right?
Yes, they did all of that. Yeah, I got used to it. I grew up with it.
If I went to a GP for 30 years, I'd be worried about myself.
I agree. And this is the thing with physiotherapists. They say, well, you come and see us 3 or 4 times. We don't want you to come back. We want you to get better, and then you look after yourself. But the chiropractor, you're going there for 30 years. It's kind of like psychologists and psychotherapists or psychoanalysts or something. It's that kind of thing.
Oh, no, she's working the beast.
But it's that kind of thing, you treat something, somebody gets better, or you encourage somebody to just keep coming back.
It's a business model.
Another alignment, actually. I can't think of a segue, but Eran, you wanted to bring politics into the discussion.
Well, no, actually, no. It's all about science. This is all about science. So, as listeners, regardless where they are in the world, would probably know, there's been New South Wales has suffered a very bad fire season. Now, the fact that we call it fire season tells you that fires are a regular thing in Australia. But bad fire seasons are not that common. They happen every few years. Every now and then, what we have is particularly bad fires.
Yep.
And where the fires basically burn out of control. Very often, because the way we live in Australia is we live amongst the trees, and those trees that we chose to live amongst have a lot of oil in them, and burning is part of their life cycle to a large extent. It's just the way it is. Now, with all these fires now that are happening now, Senator Adam Bandt from the Greens said that came out in the press and basically made the link between those fires and climate change. And the UN representative to climate negotiations of some sort also mentioned on CNN, an interview on CNN, that these fires probably linked to climate change. She was actually a lot more careful than Adam Bandt. What she said was that there's a general link, but she said there is no evidence that these specific fires are connected with climate change. So she was quite careful from a scientific perspective to present it correctly. But 2 things have happened, and one is that in general people came out in the press and complaining about Adam Bandt and how can you politicize this tragedy?
That's right.
So I have issues with the Greens and their attitude and all that, but if you're not going to talk about the cause of the fires while the fires are burning or soon thereafter, when are you going to talk about it?
That's my argument too.
I mean, so you have to wait until everybody forgets about it?
It's no different to after you've had a mass shooting in the US and you're not allowed to talk about gun control because it's not the right time.
Yeah, it's politicizing the tragedy. So no, this is not politicizing the argument. This is not politicizing the tragedy. What it is debating a very important thing, which is the reason for the tragedy. So, and again, this is regardless whether you agree with Adam Bandt or not. So Greg Hunt, who's new Minister for the Environment, came out in the press and said, obviously first made that point about politicizing the fires, but also mentioned that fires have been happening in Australia for years. And how does he know this? Because he looked in Wikipedia. And so he mentioned that's what he said on the BBC. And he said, he looked up the Australian bushfires, and what he said here, and I'll quote, it opened up, so I'm quoting Greg Hunt now, It opened up with the fact that bushfires in Australia are frequently occurring events during the hotter months of the year due to Australia's mostly hot, dry climate. Good on you, you can read. Now, you see, there's just one problem with that. He's cherry-picked, which is hugely unexpected, of course, from a politician. Why would a politician cherry-pick? So the problem is this. In the same Wikipedia entry, just a little bit further down, it also says this, that over the since 1851, there have been 40 major fire seasons, okay, of this kind. 40 of them. 2 of them happened in November out of the 40. 1 in April. And all the rest happened in December, January, February, and March, which are the summer seasons, the summer months in Australia, and March is the beginning of autumn. October. This is the first time that it happens in October.
Wow!
So the first time in 162 years of record, kept record, where we have this kind of fire in October. Wow. Now this is not just in October. This is fairly early in October. It's like the fire started.
A week ago?
A week ago.
More than a week ago.
It was last Wednesday.
So we're talking about mid-October.
Yeah.
So this is extremely early. Now, before then, remember, in 162 years, there's been 2 in November, and all the rest were in December, January, out of 40.
Yeah.
So you can't. Sorry, Mr. Hunt. Despite what you might want to think. This is directly related to climate change. It may not have been directly caused by climate change in the sense of climate change lit the fire. But yes, absolutely. These things will happen. The science shows us that these things will happen more often and earlier. So you can't say that it's not linked. Of course it's not directly linked. Of course it's almost impossible to show that direct causal link between climate change and any specific event. But you can draw the statistical conclusion, and that's exactly what needed to happen this time.
Greg Hunt runs on a roll.
Greg Hunt, don't get in my way when I speak. First of all, in 1990, Greg Hunt won a university prize for his thesis entitled "A Tax to Make Polluters Pay," where he was actually in favor of the carbon tax that he now thinks is the worst thing since since Julie Gillard, yeah. But you see, the thing is, Greg Hunt picked on the internets, so the internet's picked on him again, back, and this is what happened in the next couple of days after he made that statement. The Wikipedia entry for Greg Hunt was changed several times before Wikipedia blocked it. And for a few minutes there on Thursday of last week, it said, "Since the 2013 election, Hunt has become the Minister for the Environment. He has already proven to be terrible at his job, to no surprise." And then another gem, a bit longer but worth reading. He, Hunt, is notorious for using Wikipedia to conduct research on environmental issues. Despite having access to vast bureaucracies staffed by some of the finest and most dedicated minds in the nation, like some total turd. Critics concede that his 1990 honours thesis on the necessity of a carbon tax was probably more academically rigorous than the manner in which he comports himself as one of the most powerful people in the country. But others defend their characterization of the Environment Minister as an utter winner. So, you see, he was wrong. He was wrong of him to pick on the internet. So, obviously now his Wikipedia immediately changed the rules, and now it can only be edited by registered editors. But
I've got some more edits. Can I read them out?
Oh, yes, please do.
So, this is some more that have since gone. He's Minister for the Environment, blah, blah, blah. He wouldn't know science from his a-hole. He's a father, a member of the Legislative Council. He is married and has a daughter and a son. He was raised as a eucalyptus tree and was briefly Emperor of Pluto during his teens.
Because it says it on Wikipedia.
It must be true.
Well, listeners may not, we were joking about this before, but some listeners may not realise, listening around the world, when we did have our change of federal government 2 months ago, 3 months ago, when was it? Something like that.
Yeah, too long.
the new government has not seen fit to appoint a minister for science. Nope. And other very...
But we've got a sports minister.
A sports minister?
And an Anzac Day minister too. We had
Anzac Day?
Yeah, we had one, but I think he's resigned already or something.
Yeah.
As long as we have a sports minister, we'll be all right.
Sports, also the Minister for Health. Like, put health underneath sports.
Yes.
Or something, yeah.
Health and sport are the same.
Yeah,
You're
yes.
Public.
You I've noticed, Dr. H, on your Facebook, you put up various pictures of our Prime Minister. Or you comment on them.
Well, I had to get 2 Twitter accounts because just leading up to the election, I lost 300 followers. So,
did you?
Yeah, I now have a Twitter account called @DrPinko, which is where I whinge about politics.
Pinko left-wing politics.
You've got a Twitter account called @DrPinko.
Yeah.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, and that's where I complain about politics. It's awesome because it means I can just rant and vent, and nobody unfollows me anymore. Yeah, so I try to keep all of my left-wing pinko behaviour to that account so that I don't bother people too much. So if you want to follow it, go for your life.
We could have a whole other podcast devoted to politics. I wonder if anyone's thought of that before.
We call it the Pinko Zone.
Dr. Pinko Show.
Actually, can I give a plug to a podcast?
Sure.
I did an episode of the Herd Mentality podcast last week with David Hawkes, Dr. David Hawkes, which was great fun, and we did an episode all about anti-vaxxers, so I thoroughly enjoyed it.
So Google the Herd Mentality podcast.
Great fun.
Excellent.
Yes.
Well, good on you, Joe. Good for doing that. Well, the disco music's still blaring outside. I think it's time we open the door to this cupboard and escape because it's getting quite cold.
Well, also, you wanted to go upstairs and watch Hot Chocolate.
Hot chocolate.
The group Hot Chocolate are here tonight.
On the way here, Marcus asked me what music I listen to, and I mentioned, amongst other things, 80s music. Yeah. And then we came in, and as we were checking into the club, the lady says, "Did you come for the show?" And I said, "No. Who's playing?" She said, "Hot Chocolate." I said, I said, "The Hot Chocolate?" She said, "Yes." I turned around to Marcus and I said, "N70s."
Well, Margaret and I were here a bit earlier, and we were just looking around upstairs. We peered through the door to the showroom, and there they were on stage rehearsing.
Yeah, they look good, sound good too.
Look good, Hot Chocolate. So there you go.
And it's amazing what plastic surgery does.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
Good on them. Well, Margaret, thank you for coming along and sitting in with us.
It's been really interesting.
And I hope we can see you back, maybe, hopefully, in a better... in your lounge room, isn't it, next time?
Yeah, but I'm not cooking Chinese. So.
Dr. Agee with your lovely chili earrings.
Yes. Thanks for having me, Richard.
Joanne Benhamu.
Thank you, Richard. Just a reminder to everyone to follow Friends of Science in Medicine on Twitter, please. And we'll have another newsletter coming out in about a month. So hop onto the website and see what we're up to.
Eran, Segev.
Vote for the skeptics.
That's what I say. Marcus, thank you for coming along.
Well, thanks for having me, Richard.
It was fun. Anytime. And for this think tank in our cupboard under the stairs.
Next time at Storage Screen.
It is. Look at the old speakers in here and all sorts of things. Cheers, everybody.
Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone, and I can't wait to see you down in Canberra in a few weeks' time. And don't forget, there's all sorts of fringe events happening for free. The convention, all the information, nationalskepticsconvention.org, should be very interesting. It's going to be a bit of a mixture of conspiracy theories, JFK, Doctor Who, because it's the 50th anniversary of Doctor Who at the same time. Lots of fun with Maynard and myself and Dr. Agee and Eran Segev and all sorts of special guests, and Chris French from the UK and Chrissy Wilson. Wow, can't wait to get there. Can't wait to get there. We're going to have a great time. And if you are coming along, please come up and say hello. I'd love to have a chat with you, meet you, and share a joke, share a drink, share a bent spoon. Who knows? And speaking of bent spoons, we'll be awarding the Ben Spoon Prize at the National Convention. Who's going to win it this year? Which pseudoscience or psychic type claim is going to win the Australian Skeptics Ben Spoon Award? Well, if you come along to the convention and come to the dinner, you'll find out straight away. Coming up on next week's show, more from Maynard at the recent Skeptic Camp. And I'll be giving a report about the Young Scientists Award here in New South Wales, which I'm attending tomorrow, as a matter of fact. I'm going down to give out some prizes and give a little talk to the young scientists. Really looking forward to that. It's one of the perks of the job, I guess you could say. But until next week, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia.
You've been listening to The Skeptic Zone. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for comments, contacts, and extra video reports.